You wake up on cold, hard rock. There's no roof, just the open sky and a bone-chilling wind cutting through your bare skin. You're hungry, but there's no fridge, no supermarket, not even fire. A rustle in the bushes nearby stops your breath. Is it prey or a predator? Now tell me, do you think you'd survive? The truth is, the world of our ancient ancestors was as brutal as it was breathtaking, and the average modern human wouldn't last 5 minutes. This isn't just about hunting and fire, it's about what it really meant to live in a world ruled by nature, where every decision could mean life or death. There's no morning alarm, only the gnawing pain in your stomach. You wake up shivering. Last night, your animal skin blanket wasn't enough to fight off the wind. There's no coffee, no hot shower, no phone to scroll through, just your breath, visible in the icy air, and the terrifying question, how will I eat today? Welcome to the daily life of a Paleolithic human. We often romanticize the caveman era, cave paintings, stone tools, roaring fires. But let's be honest, most of us wouldn't even make it through the first morning. These early humans lived without shelter as we know it. A home might have been a rocky overhang or a mud hut, if they were lucky. No doors, no locks, just nature, in all its wild, unfiltered danger. The environment alone was a test of will. If you lived in Ice Age Europe, temperatures could drop below freezing at night. If you were in Africa or the Middle East, scorching sun and predators like lions or hyenas were constant threats. Rain, flooding, disease, no problem. Nature didn't care. You were just another fragile creature trying to survive. And the food situation. Forget delivery apps. You'd need to walk miles just to maybe find berries, or track a wounded deer for hours. And even then, you'd need the skill and strength to kill it with a sharpened stick or a rock tied to a branch. If you didn't move with your tribe or failed to find food, you didn't go hungry for a day, you died. And so did your children. The reality was clear. The earth didn't owe you comfort. It didn't promise safety. In the world of the caveman, you either adapted or vanished. It wasn't just the cold or hunger, it was the constant threat that something or someone was always watching. In the prehistoric world, humans weren't at the top of the food chain. Not yet. Saber-toothed cats, cave hyenas, giant bears. These creatures didn't fear us. They hunted us. Imagine trying to sleep at night, knowing any rustle in the darkness could mean your last breath. And if it wasn't a predator, it could be another tribe looking to take your food, your tools, or worse. That's why movement was survival. Early humans were nomads, always migrating to follow food, avoid threats, and find shelter. Settling in one place for too long meant risking starvation or invasion. But moving brought its own dangers. Unknown terrain, unfamiliar predators, and the stress of keeping everyone, elders, children, pregnant women, alive on foot. Injuries were death sentences. A twisted ankle could stop the whole group, or force them to leave you behind. There were no doctors, no antibiotics, no painkillers. A simple infection from a thorn could kill. A broken bone could leave you helpless. And yet, somehow, these people endured. Not just for years, but for thousands of years. They learned to read the land. They noticed which berries were safe and which ones killed. They tracked animal migrations with incredible accuracy. They watched birds and insects to locate water. And they knew how to work together, because survival wasn't a solo mission. It was a team effort. You helped each other, or you all suffered. Today, we panic when our phone battery dies. Back then, you had to worry about dying, for real, every single day. It wasn't about living well, it was just about living, period. And very few could pull it off. Even after surviving the wild animals, the bitter cold, and the exhausting hunt, the hardest part was what came next, trying to do it all over again the next day. There was no end to the struggle. No vacations, no weekends. If you were lucky enough to catch food, you had to eat fast before it spoiled or was stolen. No fridges, no freezers. Meat went bad quickly. And fire? Fire was life. Without it, you couldn't cook, stay warm, or keep predators at bay. And starting one wasn't easy. If your fire went out, you had to make a new one from scratch, rubbing sticks together or striking stones to catch a spark. It wasn't guaranteed, it was survival roulette. And then there was the hunger that never really left. Most cavemen weren't constantly full, they lived in a cycle of feast and famine. A good hunt might feed a group for a few days, but lean weeks or harsh seasons could starve them out. Starvation wasn't rare. It was a common, grim companion. Add to that the endless physical toll. No padded shoes, no ergonomic chairs, no pain relief. Every step was taken barefoot or in crude sandals. Your body was your tool, your weapon, and your transportation. Blisters, cuts, sunburns, frostbite, just part of daily life. And yet, through all this, they adapted, they innovated, they endured. These early humans weren't just surviving, they were building the foundation for everything that came after. The language we speak, the tools we use, the concept of community, it all started here in the dirt, in the cold, in the firelight of some forgotten camp thousands of years ago. So, the next time your food delivery is late, or your Wi-Fi's acting up, ask yourself, could you really have survived even one full day in their world? Survival wasn't just about muscle. In fact, it was more often a battle of the mind, because in a caveman's world, fear was constant and instinct was everything. Imagine living in a world where your brain had to be on high alert at all times. Every sound, every smell, every flicker of movement had meaning. A rustle in the grass might be a rabbit or a snake. A quiet moment in the forest, that silence might mean a predator is stalking you. There was no space for overthinking. Hesitation could kill you. Decisions had to be fast, and they had to be right. If you paused to consider whether that noise was dangerous, you might already be dinner. So, your brain adapted. Primitive humans developed what we'd now call hyper-awareness. Their lives depended on it. And that's not all. Emotional control was also a matter of life or death. Panic in a hunt could ruin everything. Rage during a conflict could get you killed. Fear wasn't weakness, it was a signal, and managing it was a skill, a mental muscle. These weren't cold-blooded savages. They were emotionally disciplined in ways we barely understand today. Now add in the constant trauma. People in your group, family, friends, died often. Disease, injury, wild animals, even childbirth. You learned to grieve quickly and move on, because you had to. That emotional numbness we'd call cold or detached today. It was necessary then. Survival didn't allow for long mourning periods. And let's talk about danger from other humans. When resources ran low, tribes fought, brutally, with clubs, stones, spears, and no mercy. There was no Geneva Convention, no rules of war, only the law of survival. You win or you die. That kind of pressure reshaped the human mind. So no, they weren't just physically tougher than us, they were mentally sharper, hardened, tuned to the world in a way most of us have never experienced, and maybe couldn't handle if we tried. In today's world, we overthink everything. We debate, we question, we analyze. But in the world of the caveman, there was no room for second guessing. You acted, or you suffered. That kind of clarity doesn't come from luxury. It comes from danger. Let's look at instinct. Modern life dulls it. We trust GPS over gut feeling. We live in concrete boxes and barely touch the natural world. But ancient humans, their instincts were razor sharp, not because they were magical, but because they had to be. They could track a wounded animal by a few crushed leaves, predict weather changes from a shift in bird calls, sense tension in the group before it exploded into conflict. This wasn't some spiritual sixth sense, it was practiced awareness, built from years of observation, repetition, and raw necessity. And what about social intelligence? You might think tribal humans were simple or antisocial. Far from it. Group survival required incredible communication, empathy, and intuition. One wrong word could spark a fight. A poorly timed joke could mean exile. If you didn't contribute, if you caused drama, if you threatened group cohesion, you were out. And being out meant death. People understood the balance of the group intimately. They sensed when someone was getting desperate. They knew how to resolve tension without language, through body signals, tone, even shared silence. You had to be emotionally intelligent, or you didn't survive. But let's not pretend it was all harmony. Brutality was part of the package. There were no second chances for thieves or traitors, no rehabilitation centers. Justice was swift, often bloody. You crossed the line and the group removed you, sometimes permanently. Mercy wasn't weakness, but neither was punishment rare. This constant mix of emotional closeness and brutal consequences created a mental toughness we can hardly relate to today. You weren't just surviving with others, you were surviving because of them, or sometimes in spite of them. Imagine what it does to the human mind. To wake up every single day and know that everything around you could kill you. Not metaphorically, literally. The weather, the animals, the terrain, even your own kind. This wasn't anxiety, it was awareness. And while modern humans struggle with mental health from overstimulation and safety fatigue, early humans dealt with stress that was raw and immediate, not deadlines, but death. But they adapted. They developed ways to cope that were surprisingly complex. Rituals, for example. They weren't just primitive religion, they were tools, mental tools, to process death, to deal with fear, to make sense of the chaos. A lightning strike wasn't just random, it was a message from the spirits. A successful hunt wasn't just luck, it was a blessing. These stories gave them structure, meaning, something to hold on to when everything else was wild. That's where mythology came from, not stupidity, survival. They used rhythm, song, and storytelling to pass knowledge and calm the mind. Repeating the story of how the big cat was defeated last winter, that wasn't just entertainment, it was training, reinforcement, mental conditioning. It built courage, confidence, identity. And then there were the children. Kids didn't grow up with cartoons and bubble baths. They watched their parents kill and bleed and survive. They learned to mimic danger before they understood it. By the time they were teenagers, they weren't dreaming of careers, they were leading hunts, or fighting rivals, or burying the dead. Today, we label this kind of pressure as trauma, and by our standards it was, but for them it was life. And through it, they forged a kind of psychological resilience that's hard to imagine. It wasn't about peace of mind, it was about control of mind, the ability to hold fear, brutality, grief, and hope, all at once, and still keep moving. If you think cavemen were just grunting, unthinking brutes, think again. Behind every mammoth hunt, every fire, every shelter carved into the side of a cliff, was intelligence. Not the kind measured by test scores or degrees, but the kind forged in fire, hunger, and necessity. Let's talk tools. Early humans didn't just pick up sticks and rocks, they engineered. Sharpened flint blades, fire-hardened spears, and later even bows and bone needles. These were not random objects. They were designed with precision, improved over generations, and tailored to specific tasks. Want to butcher a large animal without metal? You need the right kind of stone, fractured at the correct angle. Want to start a fire with no matches? You need the skill, the patience, and the perfect combination of dry material. Try it sometime. Most of us can't. And then there's shelter. We think of caves, but many lived in open plains, building huts with wood, animal hide, and earth. These homes were insulated against cold, resistant to wind, and built fast when on the move. There were no tutorials, no diagrams. just inherited wisdom passed down by watching, trying, failing, and learning. But tools and fire weren't enough on their own. The true superpower of early humans? Community. Every survival task from hunting to child rearing depended on teamwork. While one group tracked prey, another stayed back to guard camp and teach the young. Men, women, elders, even children had roles. No one was useless. If you didn't contribute, you didn't stay. This wasn't just cooperation, it was trust. Built from shared struggle, these weren't dumb cavemen. They were master survivalists, engineers, craftsmen, strategists. And everything they did, everything, was shaped by one goal: keep the group alive. The real strength of caveman life wasn't just in the tools, it was in the tribe. You see, survival wasn't a solo act. Hollywood might show the lone caveman battling nature with a club, but that's not how it worked. The tribe was everything. It was your protection, your education, your support system, and your only shot at staying alive. And the roles within it? Surprisingly advanced. Elders weren't pushed aside, they were walking encyclopedias. They knew which plants healed and which ones poisoned. They remembered where game used to gather in dry seasons. They knew the sky, the stars, the land. Their stories were maps, medicine, and morality wrapped in one. Lose your elders and you lost your history and your edge. Children weren't babied. From a young age, they watched, listened, and practiced. They learned by doing, shaping stones, mimicking fire building, joining small hunts. By their teens, many were skilled in what we'd now consider wilderness survival. No textbooks, no schools, just hands-on mastery. And then there was communication, far more advanced than we usually credit. They didn't just grunt, they gestured, used facial expressions, shared sounds and symbols with specific meanings. Over time, this evolved into early language, not only for survival, but for culture, for bonding, for warning, for celebrating a successful hunt, or mourning a loss. Language began as a survival tool, but it became the glue of humanity. Don't forget resource sharing. In modern life, people hoard. But in early tribes, food was split among everyone. Even the sick and the weak were fed, because they'd do the same when roles reversed. It was empathy, sharpened by necessity. So while we today live in cities surrounded by millions, many of us feel disconnected, alone. But in the brutal simplicity of caveman life, everyone mattered. Everyone belonged. And every person's survival was tied to the survival of all. They didn't just live, they relied on each other. Let's face it, most of us wouldn't last an hour in their world. Could you build a shelter with no nails or rope? Could you gut an animal and preserve the meat without refrigeration? Could you treat a wound without antibiotics or clean water? These weren't extra skills. They were basic knowledge as natural to them as scrolling is to us. Take fire, for example. We see fire as a given. Flick a lighter, done. But to a caveman, fire was sacred. It meant warmth. It meant light in a predator-filled night. It meant cooking meat, which made food safer and easier to digest. A game changer for brain growth. They knew which rocks sparked, which trees made dry tinder, how to shield flames from rain. Fire wasn't magic, it was hard-earned wisdom. Or hunting. You didn't just grab a stick and go running at a deer. You had to understand animal behavior, wind direction, camouflage. You worked with others in silence, communicating through hand signs. One mistake, and the prey was gone, along with your food source for days. They even understood seasonal planning. Many tribes stored food, dried meat, tracked migratory patterns. Some dug pits to trap animals. Others used smoke to preserve fish or meat. It was primitive, but it worked, because it had to. And all of this required patience, repetition, and a mindset we've lost, the ability to slow down and observe the world closely. In a time without tools, electricity, or even written language, our ancestors figured out how to thrive, not through brute strength alone, but through problem solving, adaptability, and collective wisdom. We think of them as behind us, but maybe, in some ways, they were ahead. Because when everything we depend on is stripped away, it's not your Wi-Fi password that saves you. It's the skills your ancestors lived and died by. So now you've seen it. The hunger, the fear, the brutality, the brilliance. Living as a caveman wasn't just about survival. It was about balance. A raw, unforgiving dance with nature that demanded strength, instinct, and community in equal measure. No safety nets. No shortcuts. Just humans, the earth, and the will to keep going. You wouldn't last 5 minutes? Maybe. But then again, maybe that's not the point. Because deep down, in all of us, some part of that ancient survivor still exists. A part that craves connection, that responds to challenge, that remembers what it feels like to truly fight for life. And maybe, just maybe, remembering where we came from helps us see where we've lost our way. We live in comfort now, but we've lost resilience. We've gained convenience, but forgotten cooperation. Our ancestors didn't just survive, they built the foundation for everything we are. Not with tools, but with courage, creativity, and community. So if you've made it this far, thank you for walking with us through time. Now here's your part of the story. Subscribe for more mind-blowing journeys into our ancient past. Hit that like button if this made you think twice about your rough day. And tell us in the comments, could you survive in the world of a caveman? Until next time, stay curious, stay human,